If you've been doing car photography for a while and still feel like your photos just don't look right, I can almost guarantee you that you're making one of the 5 mistakes that I will be highlighting in this video today. And believe me when I say this, I've made all of these mistakes myself throughout my years of being a car photographer. And even still today, sometimes I make some of these mistakes myself because none of us are perfect. I look back at some of my early work when I started almost 9 years ago, and I see a lot of these mistakes back then. And even now in my current work, sometimes I do see some of these mistakes creep up out of the woodwork, but it's important to recognize what they are and how you can fix them, which is exactly what I will be covering in today's video. If you don't know who I am, my name is Joe, and I have been shooting cars for, like I said, almost 9 years now. And just within the last couple of years, I've been posting consistently online, showing my behind the scenes workflow of live photo shoots, live event coverage, and even my editing. And I have grown my audience from a mere 390 people to just 150,000 in just 1 year. So needless to say, I've done a lot of growing in the last couple of years. When I first started with car photography, I started on a $600 Nikon DSLR camera that I couldn't even afford, but my family bought me as a birthday gift. And I actually do have a video where I took it out and took pictures with it not that long ago. So if you want to go check it out and see how those photos turned out, I will put that link in the description down below, up on screen, wherever. Now that camera costs around $600 brand new, and now I shoot on a Sony a7 IV, which brand new with a lens, SD cards, batteries, all that stuff, cost me roughly $4,000. It's definitely a very big difference between the two in terms of price, but I've also taken photos on my iPhone, which I do have a full series on that, which you can go check out after this if you like. Now, all this gear doesn't necessarily matter at the end of the day, especially if you're making any of these 5 mistakes I'm going to be covering in this video. So we'll go ahead and get right into it. The first mistake that a lot of people do without even knowing it is taking your photos from your eye perspective. And when I say your eye perspective, I mean if you're walking out to your car from work or you're walking around a car event and you see a pretty cool car, 9 times out of 10, people are gonna pull out their phone and take a picture at this level, eye level. And this is probably a mistake that a lot of people don't think about because we just naturally are drawn to doing that whenever we see a car that we like. But this is actually a hidden mistake that can really set yourself up for failure in terms of making yourself stand out from other people. And an easy way to do this is to simply adjust the height of your camera. And a good way to test this is by taking your camera out to your car, or maybe you're at a car event when you go and do this, and take a picture at eye level, and then take a picture at headlight level, and then lastly, even take one closer to the ground. Maybe you're crouching close to the ground, or you're sitting on the ground aiming your camera upwards. This is a really good way to see the difference between each different level, each perspective, shooting at the same angle. And it seems very natural to want to take pictures at eye level, but in reality, that doesn't really tell a whole story or give any sort of feeling to the image whenever you're looking at it from a third person perspective. So it looks pretty flat. It doesn't look aggressive. It doesn't look like it's cool or anything. It just looks plain. And honestly, for me personally, it looks like just some random car spotter ran out and took a picture of this hypercar and posted it online. It doesn't really tell me that a professional photographer took this picture because they didn't really put much thought into the composition of the photo. Now, I do have photos like this from early on in my photography career, and I'll show them up on screen. And I probably even have photos like this that I've just taken on my phone when I'm out and about, like, oh, that's a cool car, let me take a picture and move on, because I don't really put much thought into it. And then after the fact, I look at the picture and I think, oh wait, I actually probably could have taken an extra 10 seconds to maybe crouch a little bit lower and get a cooler angle of that same shot. So the fix is very simple. It's just as simple as being aware of it and then making the change very quickly in the field. And I think the best part about this is this change, this fix costs absolutely nothing to you other than maybe 10 to 20 seconds of your time. You don't have to worry about changing a gear. You don't have to worry about getting different lens or getting special filters in order to accomplish this fix. You really just have to change the way that you're looking at the car. And like I said, 10, 20 seconds maybe in order to make that fix happen real time. The second mistake I want to cover is ignoring the stuff going on in the background. Now, this is very difficult if you are somebody like me who likes to go to a lot of car events, local cars and coffees, cruise-ins, or motorsporting events that have like a showcase of cars. There's a ton of people around, there's a ton of distractions. Or if you're out in a metropolitan area, maybe you see some really cool cars on the street, or that's where you're shooting in general. And there's a lot of like street signs, poles, people walking by, all that kind of stuff. It is very difficult, which is completely understandable. And to be honest with you, sometimes I still forget about my backgrounds and I still have to go in after the fact and use the content aware remove tool in Lightroom or even in Photoshop, just so that way I can remove those distractions. Now let me paint a scenario for you. Say you're walking around downtown and you see a Ferrari 488 on the side of the street, and it's the Ferrari red just really like stands out and it's parked outside a really fancy hotel or something. And you're like, hey, this is a dope shot, I'm gonna take a picture of it. But then you realize in the background, off in the alleyway, there's a dumpster, and then right behind the car, there's a parking sign that says like no parking between this time and this time. And all that stuff is very distracting, but you don't notice it until after you've taken that photo. Because let's be honest, in that moment, all you really cared about was getting the shot. Now this can be a very distracting photo, and luckily you can fix that in post-processing with Lightroom or Photoshop or any other editing tool that has some sort of content aware removal. So it's not necessarily the end of the world, but if you're somebody like me who likes to try and get the shot as close as possible in camera, it's really important to think about the surroundings and the background of the car. So in that case, the only thing you really could have done is change the position of where you are in relation to the car. So if you had changed to maybe the side of the car and you got the silhouette shot, maybe it would be up against the building and there's no street poles or street lights or signs. And if you shift it a little bit further, maybe there would be no distractions at all, like in the alleyway, like a dumpster or people or anything like that. So that's something where it's really just about moving your feet and seeing which angle you can get that car without anything coming out of the top of the hood or the silhouette. I call it a silhouette sweep. And I don't know if this, I'm not going to coin that or anything. It sounds silly, but I just look for any sort of distractions that are growing out of the car, for the lack of a better phrase. Now, if I'm in a controlled setting where I'm doing a client shoot, what I like to do is scout out the location in advance so I know what my backgrounds are going to look like and I can plan for those things. So normally I'll show up to a photo shoot probably 15 to 20 minutes earlier, and this will already have been a place I've scouted out before, but sometimes you miss details or sometimes things change. Or let's say in your car parking lot and there's just cars there all of a sudden. So I like to plan out what it is that I'm going to be using as my backdrop, because if there's any sort of busy stuff going on in the background, it's going to pull away from the subject of the photo, which is the car. Now, if it's intentionally something in the background, like a mural on the side of a building, or maybe the building architecture itself is a feature of the photo that you want to capture, that's completely different. That's something that is intentional. And as long as it's not pulling away from the subject of the photo, then I think you'll be completely fine. So my recommendation is to scout the location first if you are working in a controlled setting before you place the car and take pictures. If you are at a busy event like a Cars and Coffee, one thing you could potentially do versus having a wide establishing hero shot, you can try punching in a little bit at a further focal length, like 50 to 70 millimeters if you have the ability to, or just physically step forward more if you're using like a prime lens or you don't have the long reach of a zoom lens, and just see what that looks like. You can cut out a lot of the distractions if you just push forward towards the car and make sure that the car takes up a little bit more of the frame, or you can even change the angle that your camera is shooting at so you can get lower to the ground. You can cut out a lot of people walking past the car if you get a little bit lower and using the car to block out the view of the distractions in the background. There's two different ways that you can do it. Either way, just be very intentional about what is in your background. Now, mistake number 3, I have honestly learned this the hard way, and that is shooting in the wrong light. So early on, whenever I would show up to wherever it is I want to take photos of my car specifically, because that's really what I learned photography with, I didn't really pay attention to the time of day or the location I was shooting at in relation to where the sun was. So I would be going out in the middle of the day at noon with the bright sun, no cloud coverage, no shade whatsoever, and I would shoot the car and just move on. And I never really put any thought into the highlights of the car or the reflections of the car, and that really screwed up a lot of my photos. Light is the variable that is going to make your car photos look flat and amateur or bold and professional. And it really just depends on the location of the light. With the sun, obviously you don't have much control over where it's at in the sky, but you do have control over where the car is in relation to the light. And the main thing that a lot of people think about at first when they think about the sun and taking photos is golden hour. And golden hour is there's two different golden hours during the day: the hour leading from sunrise and the hour leading up to sunset. And although this is probably the perfect time to go and take photos, first off, you only have an hour to get that kind of light. And secondly, it's not realistic for everybody to go out at the same time to take photos of cars every single day. I mean, life gets busy, you have other responsibilities. So there are times where you're going to be shooting in broad daylight, or my favorite time is when it's overcast or there's plenty of cloud coverage. So that way you get a lot more soft highlights in your shots. I like golden hour because it gives you the bold lines and it gives you the nice cinematic look. And I do like overcast because the overcast clouds kind of act as a softbox, like a giant softbox in the sky that really helps soften the light hitting the car. But sometimes it's not realistic, because if you have to shoot midday and you have the sun directly overhead and no cloud coverage, say you're somebody who lives in Arizona, I mean, come on, right? So maybe you don't have that as a realistic option. So I usually recommend, and do myself, finding some sort of shaded area to park the car in, or if you are shooting in broad daylight, shoot on the shadow side of the car instead of the side where the light is hitting the car, and it's creating that blown out highlight, a lot of reflections, and it makes everything look flat. So it's not necessarily just how the light is hitting the car, it's also based on your positioning. Now, I'm gonna have two photos up on screen if I haven't done it so already. This is the exact same car, which is my car, but one photo is in flat lighting and the other is in more of a backlighting kind of scenario. And all I did was change the position of the car. The same shot, same angle. It's just literally the car has been repositioned to where the light hits the car at a separate portion, and then the light spills over the rest of the car. You have a lot more bold and dramatic body lines. And when you look at these photos, they're the exact same settings and the same exact editing in Lightroom. So nothing else is different other than the position of the car. Mistake number 4 is a very common mistake, and it's got a very simple solution to it, actually two solutions to it, and that is not being able to control your reflections. These cars are giant reflection magnets. Like they're literally mirrors, okay? So no matter what light that you're dealing with, you're gonna have some sort of reflection on the car. And there are two main ways that you can combat this and minimize the amount of reflections. And the first way is actually moving your feet. So if you're looking at a car at a particular angle and the light is hitting it at a different angle, you're gonna get some sort of reflection or light bouncing off of it, okay? And then if you move yourself, say 2 to 5 feet in one direction, those reflections are going to change because the way that the light is bouncing off the car and coming towards you has changed. It's just plain physics. I'm not gonna get into that because I'm really bad with physics, but look at a car and move yourself left or right and see how the reflections are changing, or even go up and down. Sometimes if you crouch a little bit lower, you do minimize some of those reflections. And this is ever before changing your settings on your camera or introducing a CPL filter, which I currently have on my camera right now. Unfortunately, a lot of people, including myself when I first started, think that putting a CPL filter on the lens is more than enough to get rid of or minimize the reflections, but in reality, it is not. The CPL paired with moving your feet around the car is actually going to be the best combo to reduce the amount of reflections. You're not going to completely get rid of all of them, but with the CPL filter, you can actually give yourself a nice gradient look to the car itself. So yes, there is still going to be some sort of glare or some sort of reflections, but you have much more control on how much and where it's at using both the physical location of where you're standing versus the car and a combination with the CPL filter. And at first, when I started taking pictures of my car and other people's cars, I didn't have a CPL filter. So I was completely relying on physically moving myself around, but I didn't even have the know-how of moving myself around the car to get rid of reflections. And that would get pointed out to me from people I've taken pictures of their cars for. And it really was embarrassing. So I did invest in an inexpensive CPL filter at the time, whereas now I have a little bit of a more robust, more refined CPL filter. So it does matter at some point, but to just get started, get yourself an inexpensive CPL filter and work on your feet placement whenever you're taking pictures of a car. If moving your feet and using a CPL filter don't necessarily make things work well for you, it may also be the positioning of the car that needs to be changed in relation to the light source itself. So with the sun, like I mentioned earlier, it's easy to just move the car around to make sure the sun hits the car the way you want it to. But if you're in a more controlled lighting situation like a studio, or if you're in a parking garage, it's a little bit different because you might have multiple light sources, you might have mixed lighting. So you really just kind of have to get creative with how you're positioning yourself and the car. And I guess it goes without saying, as I mentioned earlier, you cannot get rid of all the reflections on the car, and you actually kind of don't want to, because naturally when people look at cars, they're always going to see a reflection at some point in the car. And if you were to eliminate completely all of the reflections, it's probably going to look fake, like you didn't even take a picture of a car. And then moving on to the last mistake, number 5, which is over editing to compensate for in-camera issues. Now, I definitely suffered from this early on in my car photography career, and I do actually have examples that I pulled up, and I'm going to put them on screen right now. And these to me are considered over edited. I took these in a rush, and it was me and my friends went out for a cruise at a local state park, and I didn't account for the sun going down. It was golden hour, but I didn't really account for changing my settings. I just kept running and rushing, trying to get all the pictures I could. And then when I got back home and I looked at the pictures, I realized that my settings did not change at all throughout the entire photo shoot, and my photos got darker and darker and darker. So what I ended up doing was I over edited to compensate for my error in camera. And now this was my $600 DSLR camera, and the dynamic range on it was not that great. It was a prime lens, so I mean, obviously it was able to get a lot of light in at a lower aperture, but it still wasn't enough to make it look not muddy or fake. So looking at these pictures, it definitely reminds me of how important it is to make sure that you're getting the photos as close as possible in camera before you ever go home and start editing them. And believe me, I went through this phase of having over edits done on photos, making me think that they were looking good, but in reality they weren't. They didn't look realistic. They didn't look good at all or well balanced. It was like a lot of high contrast and high saturation, and it looks like I turned up the clarity to 100%, let's be honest, okay? So that was a phase of mine. Like I had a phase as a car enthusiast where I put cheap eBay products or AutoZone products on my car because I thought it was cool. Now I did cover some of this in my $600 DSLR camera video, which again, I mentioned earlier, it'll be in the description down below, but I only touched on it a little bit here and there in the video to prove that the camera didn't matter. And I wanted to be able to go much deeper here because I think these mistakes are prevalent in a lot of people who are starting out for the first time. And it's not as easy to find fixes for these online. I mean, yeah, you're going to get opinions from other people if you ask for it, but nobody is really like telling you how to shift your mindset, or, you know, instead of focusing on your settings and your gear, focusing on your foot placement. I mean, I don't see a lot of people talking about that because I think it's so easy to just prescribe a solution that requires money. But a lot of these solutions that I presented in this video actually don't require buying anything. They just require intuition, testing it out for yourself, and do just simple trial and error, honestly. And I want to reframe this whole over editing thing as well. I wouldn't say over editing is necessarily an issue with your style. I think it's a compensation or a symptom of a problem that is happening before you ever open up your editing software. Like I mentioned earlier, my settings on my camera during that one photo shoot never changed. And that wasn't because my editing style wasn't good. That was actually because I didn't know how to use my camera, and I wasn't properly making those adjustments in the field. So now I'm having to make up for it in editing. That increases the amount of time that I have to spend in editing to fix those mistakes. So your fix here to really fix the fifth problem here is to go back to the first four presented in this video and think about the solutions that you have for each one. And it all comes down to a common denominator, which is physically moving yourself around the car, changing where your camera is in relation to height, or maybe zooming in or zooming out, depending on what it is that you're trying to capture, and really just paying attention to your environment that you're in long before you ever really worry about your settings. Now, sure, when I show up to a photo shoot, I'm scouting location, looking for a good background, and then I'm setting up my settings as like a baseline, like, oh, hey, this looks good right now. Let's keep the settings where they are. But as I'm shooting the car, I'm changing my settings after I move to a new part of the car. So let's say I'm at a 3/4 angle of the car, got my camera up. I'm gonna change my settings based on what I'm seeing in the camera. I'm gonna take that picture. I'm gonna move over to the side of the car and I'm gonna get a side shot to show off the silhouette. Even though I've moved maybe 10 feet, I'm still gonna look in the camera and make sure that the angle I'm at's good, the lighting's good. Maybe I'm gonna spin my filter to make sure I'm cutting out some reflections or controlling them. And then lastly, I'm going to mess with the settings, and that's when that happens. That's pretty much the workflow. Some people may default to just changing their settings first and forcing it to work with the position that they're in. But if you reverse that and focus on where you're placed, where the car's placed in relation to the light, you're probably gonna have a lot easier time when it comes to your settings and editing later on. And the second thing that you can do when it comes to your editing process is have a baseline preset that helps get you started. Now, personally, I have my own preset pack, which is on version 2 currently. If you want to support me in this channel, you can go to the description down below, click on the link for the preset pack, and you can buy it yourself and see what I do with my editing, because I provide more than just presets. I provide some homework for you to help implement these presets into your workflow, and I even provide a video to show you how to install them and use them. So it's a pretty nice package that you get, and you get all future updates to that preset pack for free. Now, I've said this multiple times and I will say it again in this video. I do not believe that presets are a one-click solution. You're always going to have to make some sort of adjustments to them, especially when I was first using my presets. I was using it on a Nikon camera and I switched to Sony camera. And those are two completely different camera systems. So the presets reacted differently to my Sony camera. So these are all designed using Sony color science if you want to get technical or what have you. But every scenario is different. Every car is different. The colors are different. The light's different. So having presets though, to give you a base to build off of is going to be a very strong foundation for you to speed up your editing process. But not only that, you're going to have consistent editing throughout your entire set of photos if you use a base preset such as one of these and not starting from scratch every time. Now, some people do like to start from scratch every single time because that's just how they prefer editing, and that's completely fine. But if you're somebody who wants to be able to have consistency across all of your edits, you're going to have some of the same settings in your editing across all of your photos, so might as well just turn it into a preset to save you some time. So just to recap, the 5 mistakes that a lot of people make is going to be shooting at standing height, ignoring the background and the distractions, having the wrong light, uncontrolled reflections, and over editing. And I'm gonna reiterate this because I want you to really notice this in this video. All of the fixes to all of these problems do not require you to buy new gear. It simply requires you to pay attention to your surroundings, and it requires you to move your feet a little bit more. Now, yes, sure, if you want to work on controlling your reflections, you do need a CPL filter to help you. I would argue that you always need to have a CPL filter. That would be my one asterisk to that statement, is like, if you're going to shoot cars all the time, you might as well get a cheaper filter to start out with. You don't need to get a super expensive one, just get one that fits your budget, and then just do both. Use the feet placement and then your CPL filter. Now, this is almost 9 years of my own knowledge that I'm dumping into this video, and I don't know how long this video is at this point. Hopefully it's less than 30 minutes, but hopefully this has been insightful for you, and maybe take some of these tips that you have learned today out to your next shoot. Come back and let me know if you've implemented any of these tips or fixes in the comments down below, if they have benefited you, Or if you have any of your own tips or tricks that I didn't cover in this video because I don't know everything, let me know in the comments down below, because I would love to learn from you as well. And I think other people who watch this video would appreciate having some additional information on what they can do to fix their photos. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, hit the like button down below. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. And I will see you all in the next video.